Alright, welcome to class. So I'll be doing a review of CRS to the synoptic gospel. This is just a review of all that you have in your syllabus to study, okay? The review of all the topics in your CRS2 syllabus. So in your CRS2 syllabus, we have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. We have about 20 topics, right? So we are just going to do a review of every one of them. All right, so the first topic here is oral and written gospel. So under that, there are two things that they need you to know: the factors that delayed written gospel. So which means they can ask you to mention the factors that delayed the written gospel. So I just wanted to note some things that if you have questions, you can ask me after. So each of those topics, if you have questions on them, note it down. When I'm done, then you can now ask questions. All right, so factors that delay written gospel. Now remember that initially the gospel that we have today was not written down. So, and then there are factors that actually delayed it from being putting down, like from it being written down in the book. So what are the factors? I think one of the factors is that the fact that they thought Jesus was coming soon. So they felt like, let them just continue to evangelize to the people, that are the disciples. Let them continue to evangelize to the people, and then afterwards, maybe Jesus will come in that process. So they feel writing it down might take time. So let's just start evangelizing. Then another thing is that at that particular time, writing was not that popular. Like not all of them are literate. They don't really know much about writing, so they have to delay till when they know. And then they didn't have enough funds at that time as well. So when you are reading, you'll be able to know at least 5 factors that delayed written gospel. Then under that topic as well, they will also ask you for factors that prompted the written form of the gospel, in the sense that eventually the gospel was written down. So what are the factors that prompted them? So like I said, one of the factors that prompted them is when they saw that the coming of Jesus was delayed. Like this person that they thought was coming was no longer coming early, so they had to just let's start writing this thing down, because at that time they had what do we call this, oral witnesses, like people that were giving them stories, like people that were around during the time of Jesus. So let's say they did not know a story about, let's say for instance the wedding at Cana. They are not aware. They can easily meet someone that was at that wedding, that please, what happened so time, and person will, but they realize that these people are already dying. So they need to quickly get information they could get and put it into writing. And also they started having funds. So because they started having access to funds, started writing down. And then the literacy thing, at a point, some of them became educated. So some of them can now read and write. So they can now put the gospel down. So that's basically the what you need to know under the first topic, oral and written gospel. So factors that delayed written gospel and the factors that prompted written form of the gospel. So the second topic is nature of the synoptic problem. This is one topic that they always ask, synoptic problem, because the topic, this CRS2 is called the synoptic gospel now. So if they do not ask you about synoptic problem, sometimes it's very, very rare. So make sure you know it 100%, and it's quite simple, right? When you're talking about synoptic problem, when something is a problem, the problem is that synoptic means they see similarly, like their story are quite similar. But when we're talking about synoptic gospel, we're talking about Matthew, right, Mark, and Luke, right? And we're saying that these 3 gospels, they have similar stories about the life of Jesus. They have the same story about the life of Jesus. And then there is not a problem of how did they get this information, because the authors are not same. So it's just like saying that I wrote a book, you wrote a book, and then after reading the book, I realized that the information I gave and the one you gave is quite the same. So they want to answer the question of why do we have similar why do we have similar stories? So that's the problem. That's why they call it the synoptic problem. The problem of they want to explain the similarities and differences among the synoptic gospels. They want to explain the similarities and differences among the synoptic gospels. That's what synoptic problem is all about. So under that topic, they expect you to be able to explain the synoptic problem. All right. They also expect you to explain the similarities and the similarities among the synoptics. That is, what are the things that are similar with the synoptics, and then the similarities among the synoptics. So you maybe tell us that this and this is similar. Like they all talk about the life of Jesus's journey, the miracles that Jesus performed and all that. But what are the things that are not the same? One of the things I can remember right now is that, Matthew gave us a genealogy of Jesus, right? But what's it called? Mark didn't do that. Mark just went straight into the story of John the Baptist, like how John the Baptist was given, how he was outside calling people to be baptized and all that. So they do not have similar stories. The essence of this class is not to teach you again. It's just to remind you of the things, and so that when you are going back, you can. All right. So you should be able to know the similarities and the dissimilarities. All right. Then theories and solutions to the problem. What are the solutions that they gave to this problem? One of the solutions is that they came up with theories. There's what they call the two-source theory, right? That they said we have a source, which is M source. So they concluded that the M, which is Mark, the book of Mark was the first book to be written, right? And they now said Luke and Matthew copied Mark, right? And they now also said that there's a particular source called Q source, Kel. That's another material. What they mean by source is that, let's say you have you want to write a book now. You know that you can't just write everything in your head. You need to check on what some people have written before. So let's say you check a particular textbook now. Let me use biology for instance. You are writing biology, and then there are several books on biology. We have essential biology, we have modern biology, right? So let's assume that modern biology stands for M source, essential biology stands for E source. So that's what they're trying to explain here, that okay, Matthew and Luke copied Mark's work, Mark's narrative, and then there's another source that they used, like a document that they use called Q. So it's like the name is hypothetical. They don't know the name of the material, right? But they have to just give it a name, Q source. Do you understand? So that's one of the solutions they gave to you, that okay, let's just say that they use Mark. That's why we have similar stories in Matthew and Luke, because they copied Mark. And also they now said, okay, the question of what about stories that Mark did not write, that we now found in Matthew and Luke, like what explanation will you give to that? So they are not saying that okay, any story that you found in Matthew and Luke that you cannot find in Mark, that means they used the Q source. Do you understand? So that means those stories that are similar with Matthew and Luke and you can't find in Mark, they are in Q source. Which also means that brought them to the question of okay, what about stories that are peculiar to only Luke and you cannot find in Matthew? They now came up with the four source hypothesis, that means Luke also used another material that is called L source, and Matthew also used another material called M source. So which means any story that is only particular to Matthew got it from M source. Do you understand? So you should be able to explain those theories. You should be able to explain those theories. All right, so moving on. The gospel according to St. Matthew, that's the next topic. So in this particular topic, they will ask you questions on authorship and dates, like who wrote who wrote the book of Matthew and when was it written. So you know that you need to remember that. So I think according to research, the book of Matthew was written by Matthew, Abby? Right? Was it written by Matthew? Yes. Okay. So please, if you don't know, go and find out. And then they will ask you for the date and then the destination. Destination means who did he write it to? Who did Matthew have in mind before writing? And also characteristics of St. Matthew's Gospel. They will ask you what are the things that are peculiar to St. Matthew? What are the things that Matthew talk about? One thing that I noticed from Matthew's story is that Matthew kind of talk about the new law, the new covenant that God has, trying to let them know that he presents Jesus as the second Moses, you get. So they want to talk about the things that are peculiar to Matthew. One thing that makes Matthew stand out. So another thing that I feel Matthew was trying to write to the Jews that are scattered outside Jerusalem, like those Jews that are no longer in town. He wants the gospel to get to them, all right? So we also have gospel according to St. Mark. So you should be able to explain the characteristics of the book of Mark. Who wrote the book of Mark? I think we said that John Mark wrote it, right? And then what year? It was written around AD 65 to 70. You should note that. Then who did he write it for? Who did John Mark write this book for? And then what are the things that are peculiar about the book of Mark? I think Mark emphasized on service and sacrifice. How much God sacrificed for us. You get, so those are the things you should mention. Then moving on very quickly, gospel according to St. Luke. All right, so we have the authorship. We were told that the book of Luke was written by Luke the physician, right? And we're told that it was written to Theophilus, although there's another explanation to it that Theophilus means the lover of God. So it could mean that it's actually written to Theophilus himself, or all lovers of God, like all the people that love God. You get? So that's that about Luke. And then characteristics of Luke. I think one thing I noticed is that they always talk about Luke quite often. Like they always ask you questions about Luke quite often. Like, what did Luke talk about? And one thing is that I think Luke is a universal book. Luke actually talk about women, talk about how God involved women in his ministry and all those things. How Jesus life was characterized with prayer. Jesus was always praying. How Jesus transfigured and all those things. So you should note all those things, right? So one thing I would advise is that most times in your question for Ijmb, they always they always have first two questions that they will ask you to answer one out of the two. So when they ask this kind of question, most times the questions that always pop up from that aspect is question on oral and written gospel, nature of the synoptic problem, gospel according to St. Matthew. Those are the questions. This section B contains more of questions on birth and preparation of Jesus downward. So for this kind of thing, one trick that I always give my students is that, see, you don't have to know everything, right? Just make sure that out of this, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these are 5 topics that might come out in section A. So out of these 5 topics, pick 3, right, that you know 100%. So let's say you want to pick oral and written gospel, nature is not a problem, and then maybe you pick gospel according to St. Matthew. But I would advise that you pick 4. Reason is this: what if the 2 questions they will ask you comes from the gospel according to St. Matthew and St. Mark? One thing is that they cannot ask for the 3; they can only ask for 1. So you can do something like learn oral and written gospel, nature is not a problem, then 2 out of this. So you cannot decide to just learn gospel according to Matthew and gospel according to Luke. So at all, if you want to ask, if you roll a dice, out of 3, 1 out of the 2 will come out. Do you get? Just for you to play safe. So that's that about that. So let's move on to the birth and preparation of Jesus. Yes, the birth and preparation of Jesus. So the first subtopic there is birth and early childhood of Jesus. So they can ask you to narrate the birth of Jesus from when the angel appeared to Mary. All right, so you should be able to describe what happened. If you can quote the word of the, are you okay? If you can quote the word of the angels, you can do that. Just quote it, like, oh, when the angel appeared to me and said, "Blessed are you, Mary," everything that the angel said. If you can quote it, but if you can't, what you should just do is that just paraphrase. Don't go and quote wrongly. It's better you paraphrase. Do you understand? So they can ask you about so you'll be able to know the story of how Mary was betrothed to Joseph, the things that happened, how God told them to leave to when they want to give birth to Jesus, how God told them to stay in Egypt because Herod wanted to kill Jesus, right? You'll be able to narrate that. And then the early childhood of Jesus, it includes how Jesus went to the temple and they were looking for him and all those things. And then the second subtopic there, we have baptism of Jesus and its significance to believers. All right. So in that particular topic, they want you to explain, to describe rather, Jesus' baptism. What are the things that happened? The voice that came out from heaven, what was that voice? I remember that we are dealing with synoptic gospel here. So I think those synoptic gospel, they have different way that they put those words, right? Like Matthew said, "This is my beloved son with whom I'm well pleased." So you need to know the difference, all right? And then I think one other thing about this particular story is that Matthew and Luke did not add John's attempt to prevent Jesus from being baptized. Like initially, John did not want Jesus to be baptized because he was like, you are greater than me in this kingdom, I shouldn't be the one. But Matthew and Luke didn't talk about that. It was only Matthew. So when you are reading this topic, make sure you are conversant with each gospel's narrative of that story. Then moving on, we have the temptations of Jesus and their significance to believers. Most times what they ask you to do is to tell us, narrate maybe Mark's version, Luke's version and all that. So the major difference in this version is that the narration of Matthew was now kind of rearranged, I think in Luke also. So that's why you should just look out for, like, how did Matthew put it, and how did the other version put it. So I think you've gotten that. I'm trying to rush because of questions. So we have the parables of Jesus. Parables of Jesus. So under that, should be able to define parable. Yeah, should be able to define parable. What does parable means? Yeah, I should be able to define that. The parable is when you try to use earthly story to explain kingdom matters. That's me paraphrasing. So that's parable. So why did Jesus teach in parable? He did it because the people did not really have understanding of the kingdom matter. Can you see it? All right. So we have the parables. Parables are divided into different, types or classification. We have parables of the kingdom, which is the parable of the sower that went out and then was just scattering seed. One fell on the land, one fell on what, among thorns. So she'll be able to tell us the interpretations of those parables. Then we have the wheat and tares. Yeah, parable of the wheat and tares. How somebody came. They said the servant woke up and they saw that the enemy came and poured tares among their wheat, and he told them to wait till when everything had germinated and all that. The parables of the mustard seed, when Jesus said a mustard seed, when it's planted, it becomes it became a big tree, and that's what the kingdom of God looks like. And then the second classification, we have parables about the love of God and neighbors. Under that, we have parable of the lost sheep, parable of the good Samaritan. I think the difference between Jupeb and Ijmb is that these parables and miracles were not included in Jupeb. So that's the major difference. Alright, so we have parable of the lost sheep, and parable of the good Samaritan. So parable of the lost sheep was when they said the man has 100 sheep and one lost, and then he had to leave the 99 to go look for the one. So Jesus at that moment was trying to let them know how much God loves them, how much the heaven rejoices. And then I also need you to know that we have different versions of this story, different narratives from the gospel. One said, Jesus said, these are the angel rejoice. One even said the man threw a party. You should be able to know the differences between the synoptic gospel. So we have parable of the good Samaritan as well. Talks about the man, was it Nicodemus that asked that who is my friend? When he said, how can he be born again? God told him that this is how to be born again. Was it good? Okay. Asking that what? I did what? Talk. And yes, there was something that actually started it. I think the man has a question about how to be born again or something. Then God said, love your neighbor as yourself and all those things. Then he now asked God that who is now my neighbor? And God told him, let me share a story with you. I'm Jesus, brother. Please, when you're writing, don't mistake Jesus for God. You understand? This gospel has to do with Jesus, right? So don't make mistake at all. All right. So Jesus now said, for him to understand who his neighbor is, he would describe a story of. He will narrate a story about the Samaritan, and that's what Jesus mentioned how the Samaritan, was robbed, and the Levite passed, they didn't help. The priest passed, they didn't help. There's somebody else, a stranger, helped, right? So and that God still teaching us about the love of God and how we should love our neighbors. All right. So another classification, the parables about forgiveness. So under that we have the unmerciful servants. We have the prodigal son. So the unmerciful servant has to do with the master that borrowed the servant's money, and then when he didn't pay back, he said they should arrest him and his family, and he pleaded, and he said they should release him. He has forgiven him. Then this same person borrowed lent money to someone, and the person didn't pay back, and he locked the person up, and the servant, their master got angry that I forgave you and you can't forgive someone. Like what I even owing me is I think it's higher than what the other person. Yeah. So you please know the amount. I think one is in denarii and one is in talent. Please confirm. All right. So we have the prodigal son. This prodigal son that left home, to squander his inheritance, and then coming back, the father had to welcome him, and God was just telling us that no matter what, God will still receive us back. So we have another classification, parables about wealth. The parable of the rich fool. Yeah, the rich fool that after he harvested his crops, he said his soul should marry, because now he has enough, and God said today he's going to take his soul away. So God was telling us that we should not amass wealth on earth, right? We should share with others. Then we have the parables on judgment. That's the last classification. This parable is about the talent and the last judgment. The talent, the man that has that gave his servant talent, gave 1 5, another 2 and 1, and then the 5 traded with it. The 2 also traded. The one that has 5 traded with it. The one that has 2 as well. Then the one that has 1 buried it, right? So that's about the talent. And then the one that had 5, God said they should give him more, right? So we have the last judgment. We talk about how the judgment day will look like. He said the sheep will be on the right hand side, the goat will be on the left hand side, and the sheep are those ones that did not help Jesus when he was on earth, the way Jesus explained to them. So that's all about parables. So what I'm going to say to you about parables is that the truth is you should know them, but you cannot know them 100%. Like, you can't remember all the stories. So what I would advise you do is that out of this about how many classification, 1 2 3 4 5 classification, you can pick 3, right? You can pick 3 out of this classification and know them quite well. So let's assume, or better still, let's say we have from the subjects on each of them, we have about 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. That's about 10 parables. So out of 10 parables, try to know 6. Try to know 6. Out of the 6, there's no way that your question will not come out of them. So just try to do your timetable in a way that you'll be able to cover all, right? So the next topic here is miracles. The meaning of miracles. So they will have to define miracles. What a miracle means. Miracle has to do with God showing his power over the things on earth. God trying to reveal to people what he can do through Jesus. It was not as if God came down to do it himself, but he did it through Jesus. So just to show the people that God has power over natural laws and all those things. So we can say that miracle is like a supernatural event that exceeds the law of nature, something that is beyond human comprehension. A supernatural event that exceeds the law of nature. So they can ask you to define miracle, and then why did Jesus perform miracles? One of the reasons he performed miracles is to increase the faith of the people, and then it also to make sure, most people came to listen to God, to Jesus. To listen to Jesus because they want healing, and then that actually increased their faith, and also it also gave him more audience, right? So they can actually talk about why Jesus performed miracles. You should be able to list everything. You should know at least 5 reasons why he performed miracles. Then moving on to the classification of miracles, we have nature miracles, healing miracles, miracles of exorcism, resurrection miracle of Jesus. So under nature miracles, we have the feeding of 4,000 people. The feeding of 4,000 people. So this has to do with how God fed 4,000 people with 7 what? Was it 7? 4? No, don't mix it up. We have the feeding of 4,000 and the feeding of 5,000, right? The feeding of 4,000, I think the 5,000 was when they used 5 loaves and what? So this 4,000 it's not 7. They had 7 loaves of bread and few what? Few fish. So it was 7 loaves, but the number of fish was not mentioned. They had 7 loaves of bread and few fish. So don't mix it up, please. That's the reason why we are doing this revision. So it's 5,000, but in your syllabus, 5,000 is not there. So I don't think they're going to ask you that. So it's 7 loaves, and then I think a few 5,000 people. Story is quite popular. Alright, so they use 7 loaves, and then at the end of it all, they had leftovers. So he said they recovered 7 baskets full of broken pieces left over. But for the 5,000, they had 12 baskets. So please try as much as possible not to mix it up. Alright, so walking on the sea, how Jesus walked on the sea, and like I said, all these miracles, they have different versions, different narrative from Matthew and Mark and also Luke. I think for walking on the sea, Matthew and Mark only talked about it. So to be able to notice the things that they had, the name of the place, but I'm seeing Bethsaida under Mark, and then Matthew didn't really mention the name of the place. Just so that God said they should go to the other side of the river, so you should take note of that. Then the healing miracles of Jesus, healing of the leper, the leper what's it called, that Jesus healed, the man full of leprosy that knelt before him and inquired that he should be healed, and God told him that he will. I think he told God, he told Jesus, right? He told Jesus that he should heal him, and God said, like, if Jesus wills, he should heal him. And Jesus said, I am willing, and he healed him. So that is the story about the leper. And then we have the centurion servant. The centurion servant was also healed, and then he according to what's it called, the narrative, there is a particular version that said Jesus, the man sent elders to go and tell Jesus to come to his house, and pray. And then there's a version that said the centurion himself went to meet Jesus, and told him that his servant is healed. And he just told Jesus that to say a word, right, that the servant will be healed. And Jesus said, wow, that this is such a great faith. He has not seen that before, And do you remember the centurion said that he has servant that he also said now that when he says a word, they obey. So why not? If Jesus speaks a word, it will surely come to pass, right? So that's all about the centurion servant. Then under the miracles of exorcism, we have the demoniac. The demoniac, the guy that they said had plenty spirits living in him. Remember that when Jesus asked him, he said, my name is Legion because we are many. So how Jesus healed the demoniac. I remember that in Matthew's account, Matthew said they have 2 demoniac. That Jesus met 2 demoniac at the tomb. The Mark account said it was just 1, and Luke's account also said it was just 1. So in case they ask you to narrate Matthew's account, don't make mistake of mentioning 1, right? Also, we have the epileptic boy, the guy that they said the spirit always throw him in the fire and all that, and Jesus healed him and told disciples that they are faithless and perverse generation, that why can't they heal this guy, and Jesus healed him. So we have resurrection miracle of Jesus. We have raising of Jairus' daughter. Jairus' daughter was dead, and Jesus said no, that she's sleeping, that they should send everyone wailing in the room out. So and Jesus said she should stand up, and she stood up. And raising of widow's son at 9, the widow's son that Jesus met, at the gates when they were going to bury him, and Jesus, had compassion on the woman's son, and Jesus, rose him up. All right. So the next topic that we have is the teachings of Jesus. The teachings of Jesus. We did the teachings of Jesus, the fatherhood of God. Check before parables about the parables. When we talk about the fatherhood of God, prayer, fasting, almsgiving. Jesus taught on forgiveness. Jesus taught on the fatherhood of God. That's why he told them that anything you ask, you call to me, you ask to me to the Father. So Jesus actually made them understand that God is not just the Most High like they saw him as when they were regarded as Israel like that. God is their Father. That's why he told them that if you, Heavenly Father, cannot give your child scorpion when they ask for fish, how much more your Heavenly Father? So Jesus taught them that they should see God as what? As their Father. Then we have the prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. Jesus taught them how to pray, that they should not be like the hypocrites. They should not go out and be shouting, right? They should pray in their closet, and God that hears them will also reward them. And when they fast, they should not have a sad face, something that everybody should know that they are fasting. And also they should give, and when they give, they should not allow their left hand to know what their right hand is giving. All right. And Jesus also taught them about forgiveness when he said they should always forgive. And Peter has a question on how many times, and he says 7 times. And also taught them under forgiveness that if they don't forgive, they won't get forgiveness from God, and also wealth and poverty. Jesus told them that they should not, amass wealth on earth, that whatever they have, they should give it out, like they should share with people. They should not just gather everything to themselves. And also taught them about children, that they should allow children to come to him, because that is the kingdom of God. He even said that anyone that can act like children, like to be easy for the person to enter the kingdom of God. And the last on that topic is the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus taught about the Beatitudes, when he said, blessed are the merciful, and all those things. So you should note them all. Alright, so after that, we move to Peter's confession and the transfiguration. Peter's confession and the transfiguration. Alright, so under Peter's confession and transfiguration, we talk about the significance of Peter's confession. I mean, they can ask you to narrate Peter's confession. Alright, how Jesus asked them, what do people say I am? And they started giving him different things. Some said you are Jeremiah, some said you are Elijah, and then Jesus asked Peter, and then Peter said that he's God. Said God. Peter said that he's Jesus, the Son of God, like he's the Messiah. The synoptic have different narratives, right? The way they described him. So that's all about that. After Peter's confession, the next topic is transfiguration. So it's under transfiguration that they wrote here that they can ask you to analyze similarities and differences among synoptic writers, and everything is in that textbook. How the similarities among transfiguration. Remember, I mentioned that Mark's account said 6 days. Luke said the transfiguration happened 8 days after Peter's confession, and then Luke, what was it called? I think Matthew also said 6 days after the confession. So they can ask you to analyze the similarities and differences, so you should be able to know that what are the differences. So I think 2 similarities from the textbook is that they all confirm that Peter, James, and John were the only disciples that Jesus took along. They also confirm that a voice came from the cloud that confirmed the sonship of Christ. Then talking about the differences, Peter called Jesus Christ Lord in Matthew, and then he called him Master in Luke. And also there were differences in the speech made by the voice in the 3 synoptic gospels, so you should be able to note that, right? So let's look at the next topic, which is the triumphal entry and the Last Supper. Triumphal entry and the Last Supper. So under this topic, they want you to talk about the significance of the triumphal entry, the occasion. Triumphal entry has to do with when Jesus entered Jerusalem, and then the people, he initially sent the disciples to go and get him a coat and horse, and said he rode on it into Jerusalem, and the people welcomed him. They were shouting Hosanna to the Son of David. They put clothes on the floor for him, put palm trees and everything, and he just climbed. He was climbing, and then the Pharisees told him to tell the people to keep quiet, and he said, even if they keep quiet, you command the stone and they will start shouting. And so they can ask you for significance. One of the significance is that a prophecy has gone forth that he was going to ride into Jerusalem mounted on an ass. So to fulfill that prophecy was one of the reasons why Jesus entered, and also to start his journey, to being crucified, right? So we also have the Last Supper. Last Supper happened after his entry into Jerusalem, and that was where Jesus told them that one of them is going to betray him, and that was also when he told Peter that you are going to deny me 3 times, but I already prayed for you. All that. So they can ask you for importance of the Last Supper, that what is the importance of Last Supper to believers, and what happened at the Last Supper is that Jesus shared the bread with them, which he said, this is my flesh, do it in my remembrance, and also gave them the blood, which said, wine, right, which he said, this is my blood, that they should also do it as a remembrance. And he said it's like a covenant which he has poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. So the importance of Last Supper to believers, according to your syllabus, is that this is the reason why we do the Eucharist today, the Holy Communion. This is the reason why we see the Holy Communion today. And also it's important to us because it actually signifies God and Jesus shedding his blood for us to be saved, right? So after that we have the passion narratives. It has to do with agony at Gethsemane, how Jesus went with 2 of the disciples to Gethsemane to pray, because his strength was already failing him, so he had to go there to pray. And then he told the disciples to pray with him, the 2 of them, and they were just sleeping. We're told that Jesus went to check them twice. I mean twice, yeah. Then the 3rd time he when he already prayed through, and he asked God to let the cup pass over him, but I think he did get that answer from God. So said his sweat were like drops of blood. And afterwards, after he told the disciples, okay, wake up, the time has come, they were told that this guy came, Judas Iscariot, with those priests, to arrest him, and he betrayed him with a kiss. And during the process, said Peter cut off the hair of the high priest's child, right, slave. And then Jesus had to help him fix it back and told them that they should not do any violence. So why they took him from Gethsemane, and then they took him to face trials. So we have different trials that he faced. We have the Jewish trial where he was taken to the Sanhedrin, and they had to do that because they needed to find an offense, something they can tell Pilate that this is what he did and this is the reason I want to punish him. So they were trying to gather witnesses to say things against him. They didn't find initially, but eventually came up with, okay, let's say blasphemy and sedition. All right. So what I'm trying to say is that they said Jesus said they should not pay tribute to Caesar, and which means Jesus is saying that they should not honor the Romans law, which Jesus didn't do that. So they came up with the offense of sedition, and they said blasphemy, right? So he's guilty of blasphemy because he called himself the Son of God, of which is just the son of Joseph, right? So that's what they actually the offenses that they took with them to Pontius Pilate. So when they got to Pilate, that trial before Pilate, the Sanhedrin they do not have any authority to put him to death. So they had to tell him this is what he did. But Pilate said that these charges that they brought against him, he cannot punish him. That they should take him, since he's from Galilee, they should take him to Herod Antipas. Herod Antipas is the one in charge of the charge of Galilee, that Herod should punish him. And immediately they informed Herod. Herod was excited because Herod has been looking forward to meeting Jesus. And when Jesus met Jesus, so that's the trial before Herod. So when Jesus met Herod, right, Herod told him to perform miracle. That was what he was concerned about. And then Jesus did not answer. So he said he used a sword to, eat him. And then he sent him back to the Roman governor. That he does not have anything to do with this guy. So, but at that point, Herod and the Roman governor became friends as a result of what happened. So now he was taken back to Pilate, to stand trial before him. And then one question that he asked him, according to Mark, was that, are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus said, you have said so. So, he now told those Sanhedrin that, this guy, there is nothing, he didn't do anything, so they should just free him. And they said, no, he should crucify him, and then he should give them Barabbas instead of Jesus. So one usual thing that they do during their Passover period is that they always release one of the criminals, right? So they just said they should release Barabbas and then he should take Jesus in. And that's how Jesus was taken in. But what Pilate did was that he washed his hand before them, and they should know that I don't know about this thing, like I washed my hand off it. And also, Pilate's wife also dreamt that Jesus is innocent. So he told the husband. So that's that about the trial of Jesus. So moving on to the crucifixion. On their way to Golgotha, Simon the Cyrene helped Jesus to carry his cross to Golgotha, and they did all manner of sort to Jesus, giving him vinegar with gall. They put something on his head, showing for the king of the Jews. And then he said eventually Jesus, said, Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit, and Jesus' spirit left him. And he said during this particular period, the curtain in the temple turned into two, and then there was total darkness, all over the land. And some of the soldiers were like, wow, truly this person is what? It's a child of God. And they said Joseph Arimathea came and requested for his body. He told Pilate, requested for his body, and he was the one that buried Jesus. Alright? So moving on to resurrection, Jesus already told the disciples that he's going to resurrect on the third day. So under that resurrection also, we also have different narratives. Some said, Mark said the women came, and he said 3 women. I think another version said 2 women came. Alright, so you should also take notes of different versions and the numbers of women. There was one version that said a young man, another version said an angel, another one said 2 angels appeared to them and told them that Jesus is not here, he has risen. So in case they ask you to narrate a particular version, you should know them quite well. So we also have the last topic here, which is the post-resurrection appearance. So what they want to talk about here is, most times this particular topic, what they ask about is those guys that were on their way to Emmaus. I think it's Cleopas and his friend, that they were on their way to Emmaus, and then Jesus appeared to them, and Jesus broke bread with them, and then realized that they didn't even recognize him, and he just told them that so they don't know, and he just said something that we should give them hints, and afterwards he disappeared. And then the last topic here is ascension of Jesus, how Jesus was with them for 40 days, and during that 40 days he told them that he will be ascending, and he's going to send the Holy Spirit to them, which will serve the purpose that God set on earth. So that's basically all that you need to know about CRS 2. For the president, I think the difference there is that they added method of criticism of the gospel. How did they criticize the gospel for them to come up with the solution to the synoptic problem? So that's that about that. So if you have any question, please let me know right away.